Okay, just talk.
Just okay. Third time's the charm.
Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Mike Darnell, and I am a member of the Board of Trustees of this congregation. Welcome to all of you. It's really nice to see you face to face. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Elkhart is a welcoming community encouraging religious freedom, nurturing individual growth, nurturing individual, spiritual, and ethical growth, celebrating diversity, and promoting a just and sustainable world. If you would like to learn more about this fellowship, please look at our website at uufe.org and join us after the service for our virtual coffee hour. Thank you. And for the rest of you people speaking today, use your teacher voice.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Judy Darnell. I'm delighted to see some real people in the seats. And that, of course, really moved me. But I'm here to present the fellowship life. And first of all, we'll get the business taken care of. If you have not already returned your pledge information to the Stewardship Committee, please do so this week. The committee needs your information to create the budget for next year, and they need it by the 14th. Joan Clayborn is homesick today, but has sent a message to me, and I quote, "There are drawings posted in the back of the gathering place showing the proposed improvements to the existing parking lot this spring. There is a current layout and a view of the final landscapes version. You will be hearing more very soon about town hall meetings to answer questions and to get us prepared to have our congregational meeting. Stay tuned." And Mike and I, after working hard to create a complete and accurate calendar for this month's focus, a couple of committees have chosen to upset the apple cart this week. The board will meet Thursday instead of Wednesday. And because of that, membership will meet Wednesday rather than Tuesday. And since Tuesday is now free, Pam Wycliffe is organizing a first round of small group meeting that evening at 6:15. So that's Tuesday, small group meeting, Wednesday, membership, Thursday, board. Okay, the Mid-America region of the UUA, of which we are a part, has some interesting events coming up. The Intergenerational Spring Seminar on Climate Justice will be held online from April 22nd to May 1st, and will focus on the issue of environmental displacement. Registration for this event will close on April 3rd. It would be neat to have several of us attend and then bring the discussion home to UUFE. More information is available at the Mid-America website. The Mid-America Regional Assembly will take place virtually from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday the 30th. It is titled "The Glass is Refillable: Pandemic Exhaustion, Lifelong Faith Forum, and Preemptive Radical Inclusion." There will be time for socializing and rebuilding connections among congregations of our region. Information, registration fees, and scholarships are available on the Mid-America Region website. There is a regional newsletter that I suggest you subscribe to if you'd like to find out more about these events and others. You can go to their website and just click on the button. Okay, the offering is being done in a passive manner for a while, and there are some bowls set up on by the stairway. So as you leave, you can drop your contribution in. Last week's contribution brought us $57 to share with the Humane Society. This week's collection is dedicated to the Sustainability Fund, which supports maintenance and repair of our physical spaces. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk to you from over here for a minute because I got a little thing I got to figure out. So I'm really glad to see everybody here in person. It's great. We've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm really happy. Obviously, we've got some issues with the technology, but we can get through that. That's not a big deal. And I think that once we get back into the sanctuary, which we're talking about, possibly looking at that for next time, that'll make things a little easier because the technology over there is just a little more set up than this. So I've got a story for all ages to show you as soon as I get done skipping ads and all that kind of stuff. Okay, stop. Okay, so let me get this back. Thank you for your patience. You get it? Okay. So, sorry, apologies to Ken, this story for all ages. So I guess we're ready, Joan, for the, and I'm gonna have to carry this over there. So we don't need to worry about this.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
Here in Elkhart, Indiana, we reside on the original indigenous lands of the Potawatomi and the Miami. And I'm supposed to start with the gong. We ring the gong 3 times. Once for those who came before us and made a place for us. Once for those of us who are lucky enough to be back here in our church now. Loud. And once for those who will come after us and build on the dream. The chalice lighting today is from Cindy Feskin. We are all capable in different ways with various strengths and talents. We are all holy, part of the universe and the interdependent web. We light this chalice, cherishing our differences and holding each other in sacredness. But today, we are also lighting a candle for the people under siege in the Ukraine and those that are forced to flee from their homeland like none of us can imagine. Let us hold each one of them close in our hearts and hope that the universe recognizes and appreciates how many people care as we hold them close in our hearts.
Show the crowd here.
And now I think for the first time since March 2020, we've all probably spoken the Unison Covenant along with people at home, but we're going to say it together here today. And it is printed in the order of service. So join me. Love is the
Spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another. This is our covenant.
And now we will listen to
Unmute the podium mic. Yeah, well, they did that. Apparently. Somebody did.
Don't use your indoor voice. Use your outside voice.
Okay. Those of you who know me also know that sitting around a table or in a small group, I don't mind speaking at all. In fact, I maybe talk too much. However, put me behind a podium in front of an audience, even an audience I love, and it is a very different story for me. I'm uncomfortable and often develop a nervous cough, so please bear with me. I felt that since as a devoted wife, I shared my case of influenza A with Ken, the very least I could do for him was read the message that he worked so hard to prepare for all of you. I will try my best to do it justice. I feel like I'm in an amphitheater. Concluding the 8 principles. 2 weeks ago, we discussed the first 4 of the 8 principles of Unitarian Universalism and how they might become evident in our daily lives. We noted that our use of the principles is almost second nature to many of us because the values that they represent are values we carried with us from our formative years. Many have commented that even though I spent years as a fill in the blank, Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, I was really a Unitarian Universalist all along. The 4 principles we will consider today are the 5th principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The 6th principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. The 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. In early 2023, a recommendation will be made by the Article 2 Study Commission appointed by the UUA, whether to adopt the 8th principle as written below or as revised using process. A vote will follow at the 2023 General Assembly. Many individual UU churches and fellowships have already adopted this 8th principle in their individual congregations and affirmed their agreement. However, the study commission is charged with making its formal recommendation for the entire UUA in 2023 as follows, quote, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions." Many times, especially when we are in large UU gatherings, we find ourselves surrounded by people who hold different beliefs than we do. Some may identify as secular humanists, others may be Christian or Buddhist, and still others may identify with the cycle of life described by the earth-centered religions. One thing most UUs have in common is the willingness to help get things done to improve the world. Unitarian Universalists are united by a conviction that beliefs and values must be expressed with actions or they are empty. We are committed to raising our voices against injustice, standing on the side of love, and acting together in community as change agents. This is reflected in the principles outlined. Let's look at these last 4 principles and how they may fit into our lives on a day-to-day basis. We will consider the 5th and 6th principles together since they are connected. They describe processes of fairness, which prompt us to be active in local and national social justice efforts. These are difficult principles to define and describe. As I said before, the 5th principle asserts the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The 6th principle is the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. These 2 actually work hand in hand to encourage us to use our social conscience to push forward toward the goal of world community. The current president of the UUA, Susan Frederick Gray, was a minister in Phoenix, Arizona in 2010, when Arizona's Senate Bill SB 1070 was passed. This bill would have allowed police to stop a person who might have been an immigrant and ask if they were carrying the correct ID papers to be in Arizona. This was clearly a case of racial profiling, and this unfair situation encouraged many activists, including Unitarian Universalist protesters, to take to the streets. 29 Unitarian Universalists, including 8 ministers, were arrested in Phoenix, Arizona, for acts of civil disobedience, protesting this strict law, which singled out many legal aliens in the process of trying to discover lawbreakers. Among those arrested were Unitarian Universalist Association President Peter Morales and the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who was minister of the UU Congregation of Phoenix. They were among 150 UUs, many from out of state, who came to Phoenix for actions in support of immigrant families on the day Senate Bill 1070 went into effect. Morales and Frederick Gray were arrested as they blockaded the prisoner intake entrance at the jail with 3 other UUs and members of Puente, a Hispanic human rights group. This is an example not only of the use of conscience by leaders of our organization, but it is also an example of the democratic principles outlined in our First Amendment, which gives us all the right to peaceably assemble. At the same time, actions such as these really help position Unitarian Universalists at the forefront of groups fighting for peace, liberty, and justice for all, our 6th principle. For example, the example that Ken used happens to be an example of the use of the democratic process in the society at large. However, some of you may not know that the use of the democratic process carries over to the meetings we have here as part of governing UUFE. The annual meeting each May is held using guidelines established by the bylaws of UUFE and in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order. In addition, every month, several committee meetings are held, including the monthly board meeting, which all use the democratic process to resolve issues and move forward. The 7th principle is probably the most well-known and most quoted of the principles. It is the exhortation to have respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Where could we possibly start a discussion on this principle? There are so many flagrant violations of this plea to be respectful for the interdependent web. Egregious examples of situations where we have seen modern humans continue to ignore the troubling signs that we are in the midst of what is being called the sixth mass extinction, also called the Anthropocene era, the age of humans. Since the extinctions we are seeing now are almost totally driven by human interaction with the planet and with the creatures on the planet, the age of humans has been aptly named. The following statistics are from the United Nations. According to recent estimates, species are becoming extinct at least 1,000 times faster than they would without human impacts. Populations of wild animals have declined by more than 2/3 since 1970, while the human population has more than doubled. Use the windshield test as an example. And okay, people are nodding. I know he had to explain that to me. Years ago, you drove through it at night and down a dark road, and your windshield be covered with insects. And now it stays pretty clear. Only 5 times before in our planet's history have so many species and so much diversity been lost so quickly. The 5th extinction was when the dinosaurs were wiped out 67 million years ago. That is why scientists and conservationists are calling what is happening now the 6th mass extinction. Some have even described the loss of biodiversity today as biological annihilation. Unfortunately, this ignorance and inaction may very well lead to our own demise. With 1 million species currently threatened with extinction, leading conservation organizations, including Defenders of Wildlife, Earth Justice, World Wildlife Fund, International Fund for Animal Welfare, Wildlife Conservation Society, and Natural Resources Defense Council announced a new campaign to advocate for a national biodiversity strategy in the United States. Such a strategy is needed to ensure the US government is taking an effective whole government approach to prevent the extinction of species, the collapse of ecosystems, and the increasing threats these pose to our health, security, and well-being. The late great etymologist and science writer, E.O. Wilson, wrote in his assessment of the real place humans occupy in the natural hierarchy, quote, "If all mankind were to disappear today, the world would regenerate back to the rich state of equilibrium that existed 10,000 years ago. If all the world's insects were to vanish, the environment would soon collapse into chaos." One thing we can do now is to educate ourselves in the methods which are vital to human stability on this planet. The first 5 extinctions were caused by catastrophic alterations to the environment, such as massive volcanic eruptions, depletion of oceanic oxygen, or collision with an asteroid. After each of these extinctions, it took millions of years to regain species comparable to those that existed before the event. So what is the 6th mass extinction then? Researchers have described it as the most serious environmental problem, since this loss of species will be permanent. Populationmatters.org is an organization promoting a sustainable population. They make the point that people must be allowed to make that choice, which means good, modern family planning and being free of pressure to have a large family because of their economic, social, cultural, or family circumstances. People must also understand how the choice to have a smaller family helps them, the planet we live on, and future generations. They promote 5 goals we all recognize as compatible with the 8 principles. 1, empower women and girls to become educated and free to make their own choices as far as education, career, sexual and reproductive health care. Remove barriers to contraception. Currently, more than 200 million women who want to avoid pregnancy are not using modern contraception. Most of these women live in the world's poorest countries. Number 3, a quality education for everyone. A recent UN survey showed that the more educated the respondents were, the more likely they were to understand that there is a climate change emergency worldwide. 4, global justice and sustainable economies. The UN projects that the population growth over the next century will be driven by the world's poorest countries. A more equitable distribution of wealth and resources are a key to a better future. And 5, exercising the choice to limit the size of our families. In the developed world, most of us have the power to choose the size of our families. Although we may also face pressures of all kinds over the size of the families we chose to have, when making choices about that, it's important to remember that people in the rich parts of the world have a disproportionate impact on the global environment through our high level of consumption of greenhouse gas emissions. In the UK, for instance, each individual produces 70 times more carbon dioxide emissions than someone from Niger. When we understand the implications for our environment and our children's futures of a growing population, we can recognize that choosing smaller families is one positive choice we can make. The 8th principle. Where did this start? Paula Cole Jones, Director of Racial and Social Justice for the Central East Regional Group of the UUA, developed the idea of the existence of 2 different paradigms in UU circles, the UU 7 principles and beloved community or deep multiculturalism. After working with congregations on these issues for over 15 years, she realized that a person can believe they are being a good UU and following the 7 principles without thinking about or dealing with racism and other oppressions at the systemic level. Evidence? Thanks, they have some. Thank you, Pam. Evidence? Most UU congregations are primarily European American in membership, culture, especially music, and leadership, even when located near diverse communities. UUs in the UUA have done very good work in fighting racism, such as during the Civil Rights Movement and in the 1990s, passing a resolution in 1997 at GA to become anti-racist, anti-oppression, and multicultural. But the funding and support started to wane in the early 2000s. Our accountability mechanism failed us. UUs also have a mixed record historically in other areas of racial justice. For example, we had people on both sides of abolitionism, including people like Jefferson, who was a slaveholder, and some Unitarians who were proponents of eugenics. For people identified as white, it is too easy to ignore these issues, which is exactly what keeps the system of racism in our society alive and in fact worsening right now. We need to decenter whiteness and other dominant cultures in UUism. The eighth principle came from a feeling that we need something to renew our commitment to this work, to hold ourselves accountable, and to fulfill the potential of our existing principles. But why now? The new Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and the criminal justice system, replacing the older systems of slavery and Jim Crow laws, police violence against people of color, recent Supreme Court decisions on voting rights and affirmative action, and the election of Donald Trump, with advisors and followers, including Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who openly supported white supremacists, show that the country is moving quickly and dangerously in the wrong direction. UUs need to take strong leadership to reverse these trends. Beloved community. Beloved community happens when people of diverse racial, ethnic, and educational backgrounds come together in an interdependent relationship of love, mutual respect, and care that seeks to realize justice within the community and in the broader world. Why number 8 in the USA? Whiteness and chattel slavery, or structural racism, were invented in the US at the same time that modern Unitarianism and Universalism were being created. Unitarians originally, who were largely from the New England European American elite, often did not treat Native American peoples well. They benefited from slavery, and some were leaders in the eugenics movement, promoting birth control for people of color because they were seen as inferior. Some Unitarian Universalist ministers spoke out against slavery, but we did little as a denomination. After the Trayvon Martin verdict, many UU ministers said nothing in church. UUs did a very good job during the civil rights movement, largely at the request of Dr. King, and we should be very proud of that. In the late 60s, a promising movement, Black Affairs Council / Black UU Caucus, supported by the UUA, then defunded because of a financial crisis, led to a terrible conflict, after which many African Americans left the UUA. There was a long period of silence until the late 80s and early 90s. Then excellent progress after that for a decade or so. But we've regressed, leading to the UUA president resigning over hiring inclusivity issues in 2017. What does it mean to be accountable? White UUs hold themselves accountable to communities of color to make sure whites do what they say they will do. In practice, that can mean having a people of color caucus within congregations and districts, etc., to discern and express needs and concerns to the rest of the community. UUs who are people of color hold each other accountable and help each other see and dismantle signs of internalized racism. We need an effective mechanism or structure to ensure this. And this is the 8th principle. Thank you. And now let us enjoy hymn number 38, Morning Has Broken. The benediction Ken chose for today is by Aisha Hauser and Susan Lawrence. We are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands that are ready to serve. Together, we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in our world. Let's be. Well, here we are.
Great job, Joe.
Maybe do some comment.
I'm going to take advantage of one more thing, being up here in front. I think we all need to thank Carl and Terry. I mean, this technology, it is boggling the mind, and they make it work. And thank you.